Bears head up to Minnesota against their division rivals, the Vikings, for the second time, for their second matchup this season, and they lay a goddamn egg. I've been making an unpopular opinion pretty recently about reasons to maybe sit Caleb out for the rest of the season. And I know it's unrealistic. I know how the NFL works. I know it doesn't happen. And it's unrealistic because the NFL operates off desperation, right? Thomas Brown wants a win. Your best chance to win is Caleb, period. Right? But that doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do in the long term, in the long grand scheme of things, which is what I want, right? Like I want Caleb to pan out the best way he can. And man, if this isn't like how to ruin a quarterback 101, I mean, dude, it is just, we might as well start writing the damn textbook on it, Dave, because some of the comments I get, well, he's not injured. Why would you sit him if he's not injured? It's just like, dude, do you people not realize what pain is? Accumulation of hits over 15 NFL weeks, week after week after week after week. Sure, he's, first of all, everybody's injured by this point, right? Second of all, yeah, he's not injured as in like nothing's torn. Like he can still move all his limbs. You can't tell me that kid's not hurting. Look at, he can't sit straight during the game. He's falling down on the bench. It's ugly. I really wanted to avoid this. I really want to avoid this moving forward. I know, like I said, I know it's an unpopular opinion, but man, I have just been battling it mentally, trying to hear other people's sides of it, trying to make some sense of it. And just no one's given me a solid argument of why we should throw this kid in the lion's den and just let him go out there and die for the next 3 weeks. I don't get it. I know it's unorthodox. It's just me, man. I, at this point, would just pull the plug on the season based off the situation, the unique situation that this team is at. I mean, it's all lost. Man, you're better off giving the kid a clipboard, letting him finally just rest up, and just going back at it again next year.
We talked about it every week we do this. It gets a little bit more challenging to kind of discuss it and find silver linings and everything. But the more I thought about it yesterday, the more I agree with you wholeheartedly. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I agree at this point. There's a lot of comparisons that you can use to why it's a good idea. Bryce Young was forced to just be thrown out there, and you could see what that did to him at the beginning of the next year. So the direct comparison, the most recent memory kind of comparison is Bryce Young towards the end of last year was bad. Really, really bad. And then the beginning of this year, he was really bad. And when he got a minute to breathe and relax and kind of recalibrate, he kind of fixed himself. So I think that's a situation that Caleb's already in. Dude, he got 15 games of real-time snaps and a lot of throw attempts. Like at this point, yes, the rookie season is the hardest, but I don't think anything else that happens at this point is going to be a net positive.
They're really close to giving up. You can't do it to the fans who pay to see the best players. However, I think Polsky's coming from a loving place. I'm always coming from a loving place. I want what's best for Caleb. Like that is my number one goal in this thought process. And Sam, I go to the games. I am one of those fans that pays to go and see the players. At this point, like nothing about this season's going to make me happy. Like there's, it's about next year at this point, man. And so like, if that's where your head's at next year moving forward, which is where mine's at, then you're going to make the best choices for that. And like for this year, I don't care, man. Go out there and put out whoever. It won't matter. I don't think they'll win a game regardless.
Yeah. We've said it since we've started doing this as our hobby, right? That we're never going to be loyal to a person. We're never going to be loyal to Justin Fields or Ryan Poles or Eberflus or whatever. We're loyal to the Bears. So for whatever reason, we were sucked into this trap that we're stuck in, and it is what it is, right? So we are looking out from, I think me and Paul both look at it from a loving place. We want this team to eventually be good and win playoff games and get to watch that and all that stuff. So Caleb, direct comparison wise, I don't think you're gaining much else. You've gotten 15 games worth of real-time snaps or 14 games. That's enough, I think, out of a rookie season. Some rookies play and then they miss 2 or 3 games out of injuries in the middle, and it's still considered a full rookie season or a full enough, experience. So I think at this point we're doing the optional choice, right? Which is to sit him and everything. The other point of that I think supports your point is I think at this point we've seen enough from Thomas Brown. We know for a fact he's not going to be here at this point. And if he is, it's not as a head coach capacity. It's going to be as like an offensive coordinator by some weird miracle or whatever weird shenanigans that you pull. So that part doesn't matter. It's not about learning his system and gelling even more and understanding, the playbook better. This playbook's going to be scrapped by next year anyway. So who the hell cares? He's not learning this in the next 3 games to make him better and more efficient at it. Who cares? And then the most important part, and this is a little bit more speculative, right? The same way we joke, like we care about this team more than the McCaskies at this point. I mean, it is just kind of what it is. Like we joke about that, but it's it is what it is. Like we are serious about it. We're realists about it. We care. The same way I think this is speculative, but you've got like Braxton Jones, right, with concussion-like symptoms 12 hours before a game starts. You've got Gervon Dexter, who still has a tweaked knee the same day his daughter is being born, right? Like
Sounds like these guys learned something from Nate Davis.
If they learned anything from Nate Davis, it was going to be that. And I'm not blaming them. If I'm Braxton Jones in a contract year next year, I'm not putting my body out on the line for this. I don't blame him at all. If I'm Gervon Dexter, absolutely, dude, miss that game for the birth of your first child. 100%. You should do that. If you were in like a playoff race and this is like a game for the division against Minnesota, I'd be singing a different tune. But absolutely, I think I'm not saying this speculatively in the negative. I'm saying it in the positive. You should do that, dude. You should miss this game. You should absolutely do that. But if we're talking about a team that the rest of the team doesn't have to try as hard, then why the hell is Caleb Williams out there? If no one else around him is working this hard or starting games or playing games and showing up to games, you should not be bashing in the brains of your future. And that is, at the end of the day, he's the only thing positive that you can kind of net positive gain out of this season. And so,
yeah, 100%. Everybody else gets to make a business decision.
Yeah,
everybody else does.
Huge positive. And Caleb Williams is such a competitive, tough son of a bitch that, like we said, the realistic part, probably not going to be able to bench him because I don't think he'll let you bench him. I think he'll go like, you're going to have to pull me out of there with my claws in the ground because he's like a competitive bastard, which I love. But at this point, you need to like save him from himself.
Yep.
And just maybe not, like you said, plan for the future. So I'm the negatives outweigh the positives and the positives outweigh the negatives for the reason to bench him at this point. You're not going to gain much, but you have so much to lose. So I'm with you on the whole.
Yeah. And like, Carl brought up something when I was texting him back and forth. He goes, man, a 4-touchdown dominant performance would do him so well. Like it would benefit him so much mentally as well as the rest of this team. It's just like, okay, yes, that's true. They're now on an 8-game losing streak. I get that. Like that type of game would be beneficial just for the sheer mentality of it all. What's the likelihood that they're going to go out there and dominate anybody? Not very likely, man. Like it's way more likely that you go out there and just get the kid killed. Right. So like you have to outweigh those things. You really do. And dude, now all I think it took was that first sack fumble in that game.
Mm-hmm.
To just be like, damn it, dude. Like this is when you see what it looks like, it's not pretty. Why do we need to sit here afterwards and just talk about, the value of in-game reps and this and that? People don't understand. Those in-game reps can become detrimental to your future. If they're not positive reps. There's nothing positive about the situation. Like what good are you doing?
I don't necessarily believe that Caleb's going to be broken. I think he's that tough and mentally competitive, and we'll find out in the next 2 to 3 years because we always say you need 3 years. But you can see some happy feet starting already. You can see it. I can see it. You can see where he does have a clean pocket for once, 1 out of 6 dropbacks, and you can see him start to kind of do that Justin Fields look around and kind of start to panic. There's never like a confident step through, step up, and then a clean pocket all the way through to a completion. It's always stepping through traffic, weaving, bobbing. The guy's already playing hero ball because he has to, which in all reality, it's funny and ironic because that's what he had to do at USC, and now that's what he has to do here. And so imagine, a guy who would have been like a Bo Nix, he would have just been obliterated all season. So it's irrelevant, but I think the other part of that is, what you said with Carl and giving them the confidence. I guess I agree in theory. The difference is that the guys who are still playing hard are guys that for me, Kyler Gordon has earned that second contract. We asked this at the beginning of the year about Kyler Gordon, about Jaquan Brisker. Who do you want to see here? Kyler Gordon's still playing his ass off in useless games. Maybe it's for the contract. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But the guys that are still playing super, super hard are either hardcore veterans who are playing really hard because they know that this is a job and this is how you got to perform week to week for whatever reason, or the young, dumb kids who are going to be here anyway. Caleb is still balling out because he doesn't know any better. He doesn't know how to save his body and, pace himself and save it for the games that matter. This is like the same conversation that you have about Patrick Mahomes when he wouldn't know when to run out of bounds early on in his career. And now he just knows that he just shouldn't even scramble, just get rid of the ball, live another down. And then me and you talk about this all the time. When does Patrick Mahomes' rushing yards triple, quadruple in the playoffs? Because that's when it counts and that's when it matters. So he's learned that through the seasons that he's been playing. But right now, I mean, the change is coming. This is going to be every week that goes by. This went from a team that people were predicting 12 wins, 13 wins. This is a rebuild team. This is a overhaul team. And we can get into that later, but it's more likely that the guys who you're saying you're going to build the confidence for by winning by 4 touchdowns, they're going to be on different teams. So who cares?
Dude, everything you said was spot on. I mean, dude, I watched a guy like Brady when his tackle missed an assignment and there's a free rush coming, he just throws the ball at the ground, look to play another down. That's why he played till he was 45. You know what I mean? There is this stuff adds up. This stuff adds up. This is not the way you want to start this kid's career off, man. And you already did it, and it's already gone far enough. And like you said, 15 games or 15 weeks, 14 games, it's plenty. That is plenty for the kid to put in his back pocket to be able to sit there and learn from this season. You don't need to go out there and keep doing this to him, man. Like, I just, other than stat chasing and number chasing, I don't see what you're doing here. I really don't.
Jim Daniels missed 2 games this season, and people are going to say he played a full season and had plenty of experience and plenty of practice. And if Caleb has to sit the last 2 games because we don't want him to die or get really, really hurt, then that's what it is. He still played the same amount as the rookie of the year or whoever else, the other best quarterback. So it is what it is. You just gotta sit him and save it for next year. This is all about new regimes and new changes and new teams, because this is not sustainable. There's no point.
Not sustainable at all. And frankly, it's stupid, in my opinion. And like I said, I know it's unorthodox because it just doesn't happen. Teams don't sit their guys like this, but this is a very unique situation. And like I said, it's fueled by desperation, not by intelligence and logic here, right? So the fact that Thomas Brown he needs to win. He's trying to, beef up his resume here. So Caleb does give him the best chance to win. At what cost? I don't think he even cares. He's not going to be here next year. What does he care, right? So, it's rough, man. And that's where I look at Ryan Poles, because it's like, dude, this needs to be on you. You know what I mean? Like, I know you're not typically supposed to make personnel decisions like this, but this is a crazy situation that they're in, and the last thing we need to do is ruin the only good thing we have. And dude, and I looked into this a little bit, so I asked you this, when we're talking about the number of sacks Caleb has, which is at 58 currently, any quarterback in their entire career that has had one season, not even the rookie season, just one season where they've gotten sacked more than 58 times does not have a Super Bowl ring, except for Mark Brunell, and he was like a backup that didn't even play one game when he got it, right at the very end of his career. So I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm saying it hasn't happened. Two different things, right? And so you should still take that into consideration where, this stuff really does ruin guys and mess with guys. I mean, Peyton Manning has a rookie all-time interception record. He learned from that. You could learn from those mistakes. There's nobody's been out there that's just gotten their head bashed in like this and actually learned from it. Now, there have been some quarterbacks that have gotten sacked more than 50 times in a year. Some of them have even won a Super Bowl during that year. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not I'm not willing to live and die by that statistic. However, there's still 3 games left. Like, you're on really the only comparison you have here is David Carr. Rookie got sacked 76 times. Just like Prometheus said here, man, he saw ghosts throughout his career because of sacks. He did really early on. We're asking so much of Caleb. Not only to change the culture here, to change the history of what Bears quarterbacks are, this and that. We're also asking him to be the Iron Man of the NFL.
And to overcome all these adversities at this point.
Yeah, right. Correct. And so, Prometheus, you're right. Peyton Manning had 28 interceptions his rookie year. Good stuff.
Yeah, to add to that, like, that's part of it, right? And people were talking about 4,000 yards and rookie NFL records and all this stuff. Right now, 1 year later, the trajectory for Caleb in best case scenario is either Baker Mayfield or, I mean, what are his best career projections right now based on history, right? So it's all bad, man. You gotta fix this. This is why you had to be, like we keep saying, a year ahead instead of a year behind, because now you're trying to save the day and stop this is the lifeboats on the Titanic, right? We're trying to cover the Titanic hole with a piece of gum. And so unless you are able to fix this, then I feel there would be nothing worse in my Bears fandom history than ruining Caleb Williams. I would literally, it might be worse than the double doink. It might be worse than losing the Super Bowl. It might be worse than all of it. I guess not the Super Bowl, but I can't imagine anything worse watching it happen in real time than ruining Caleb Williams, because he's so goddamn good.
Yeah, and I mean, despite all that stuff, he still had a pretty impressive rookie year so far.
Really,
stat wise, yeah. You know what I mean?
I think everything, eye test wise, stat wise, everything, he has been excellent.
Now, there's still some stuff. I mean, there's always going to be some stuff you could do better. There's still some easy completions he's missing. There's still some things like that he needs to work on, that you need to get better. It's hard to pinpoint those things and be able to work on them when chaos is going all around you, right? So, like, every play you're dealing with a chaotic situation, and then the one time you get a clean pocket and you miss an empty throw, you're going to get burned for it in the media, and people are going to take screenshots of it and be like, see, look. And it's like, dude, how can you expect somebody to perform like that when the consistency is just not there? Now, if there was consistent, good pockets, and he's consistently missing open throws and stuff like that, it's a different situation. But no, like you said, kids already run around. Dude, I told you, I already started seeing it. To me, there's a little joke going around that it's like, oh, this looks like when somebody mashes buttons in Madden, because Caleb's running around, and at one point he just like jumps.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, this kid's thinking somebody's already diving at me when they're not. This is already seeing ghosts. It's already happening in front of us. He's already, oh man, it starts. You start losing control, man. You start losing control. These decisions you make when running out of the pocket and things like that start becoming less of you manipulating things and having the game slow down for you. No, nothing's slowing down for you. Your heart's pumping, everything's going too fast because nobody wants to get hit this much.
Yeah. Sorry, I just thought that was a pretty funny comment from Ryan Poles himself. We need more receivers.
That is exactly what would fix this. 100%.
That's what Ryan Poles would actually say. Yeah. So
no, that's great. That's funny. I didn't expect a win. I really didn't. But Thomas Brown, it's definitely clear now that he is not going to be the guy here moving forward. In fact, I was absolutely disgusted with initially the first drive. It's 4th and 1 on like your own 40.
Mm-hmm.
And you go for it. You toss it to the side of the left tackle you have in there, your backup left tackle, who hasn't been very good at that position, to try and pick up a yard, and you just literally give the ball to the Vikings so they could kick a field goal and go up 3-0 right away. Like, you're facing an 11-2 team, and you're just going to let them start 3 points up.
There was some Shane Waldron there again.
I can't make sense of it. I really can't.
To start with a toss on 4th and 1 and toss it 5 yards back to try and gain 1 is absolutely ridiculous. I get maybe you're depleted on offensive line, but figure it out. Other teams do. And then the other 4th and 1 situation where they have 2 pulling players. They have Gerald Everett, who is not a blocking tight end, slide along, picking up the left tackle coverage, and then the left tackle, left guard, kick out and do a running across the and then they're doing a pulling run where the left guard and left tackle pull and run across to the right side of the line to gain 1 yard. It's very Shane Waldron-y. It's not as bad, but all of it is just, I think whatever this offense is, whatever this mental hurdle that is the curse on the Chicago Bears, it's all the same. And it looks all the same.
The pushback that I have gotten has been like, well, you need to develop chemistry with these guys. Dude, it's week 15. If you haven't figured out how to have chemistry with Cole Kmet yet, you're not about to do it in these last 3 games. You're just not. Like that's an excuse. It really is.
There's a fundamental issue too with the coaching where you have Kieran out there, Amagaji, and you know what he is and you know what his situation is. He's a left tackle in his rookie year. And there was multiple times where I saw Cole Kmet on the edge of that line, and you don't see a chip block. You don't see a running back stand. Towards the end of the game, they started going into some max protection stuff, running like 2 routes, 3 routes. By then it was too late, and it was just too stupid. But there's just some fundamental issues with the game being too big for everybody in that whole building right now. The game of football is too complicated. They overthink and outthink themselves, and it's a catastrophe. Luckily, it's just, I try not to get emotional at these games anymore, and I've been better about it, but there's still moments where I see something so stupid that it's football 101, and I just don't understand how you can be at this level and not understand that and do a better job at
it. During the offseason, Blasting Game was still on this roster at one point, and I was sitting there asking, well, is there even room for a fullback on this offense? Like, is that what they're gonna do? And here they go. They get rid of him. Now you use your backup center as a fullback over and over and over. Dude, like, he didn't report. He's a center, man. Like, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I blame him, but like, stop putting guys in positions to do things that they're not there to do. This season's done. I don't even care that much anymore. I wouldn't even get this detailed. But you're still out there ruining the number 1 overall pick.
I think right now, that's why so much of my attention is just posted towards the future, because I just don't think it's worth really talking too much about this season. I don't think you're going to gain anything, like we've been saying. Odunze is Odunze. Caleb is Caleb. I think we've seen 14 games of them, and sure, cool. Like, the best case scenario is we see a game where Caleb goes for like 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, isn't it? And that's the best case scenario. That's just something cool to talk about. But the likelihood of that happening is what, less than 10% probably, right?
Oh, yeah, I'd say even less than that, man. Like, if I had to bet on it, I would be thinking, what, I don't know, 3 to 5%.
Yeah, because the teams that are left, it's Green Bay, Detroit, and Seattle, all of them with great defenses. It's not really the point. That's why I'm saying it's just more about like my focus on the future. And then just this comment here real quick. Dennis Moody saying, like, if Ben Johnson came here and drafted Ashton Genty, I would be boycotting the season. I wouldn't watch a single game. I just couldn't do it unless they just paid for every free agent offensive lineman in the NFL. And then let's just not talk about that, please. Blackwell as punt returner. I don't know if Blackwell is going to be on this team because who knows who the next head coach is. And if Blackwell is that cheap, he's probably going to get paid a little bit more by another team because he's actually a pretty decent player. Sorry, Carl. Josh Blackwell might be gone next year. I think he's on
just to address that because I really like Dennis. He always participates in the chat and he makes some good points. I mean, I think we've done it during the offseason. I'm sure we'll do it again. In general, just drafting a running back in the first round or high in the first round is such a bad idea for team building move, period. Like, I don't care what his name is. Even the guys that do work out don't get a Super Bowl ring, right? Like,
running backs are such a luxury, and this season in the NFL is demonstrating it to you so hard. The 3 best running backs in the NFL are 27, 30 years old, and 27 or 28 years old. All of them on their second team. all of them on their second contracts, and they are a luxury because they were players that Super Bowl ready teams already were just like, you know what? You know what'll take us over the top? Fuck it. Let's go spend some money on a running back because we already have everything everywhere else. So it's not something that you invest early off first round picks. We're talking about a top 6 pick at this point, top 5 pick possibly. You do not invest that. Statistically, me and Paulie, maybe we need to do another episode of this in the next offseason just to beat the point into the ground, come with more graphics and stuff. We've done this research. If you look at running backs, wide receivers, skill position players, you can get those guys 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round. There is not one, maybe one every 5 years where an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman actually comes out of something other than the 1st or 2nd round. It just doesn't happen.
Specifically tackles, offensive tackles. Now, centers and guards you can find a little bit later. You can, but offensive tackles, those are 1st round guys. Defensive tackles, 1st round guys. Defensive end, most of them are 1st round guys. Dude, like I said, just off the top of my head, the only guy out there who's producing on a defensive line is like Max Crosby, who was a 4th round pick. There are not many examples of that. Like, there really aren't. When it comes to, this is why I was against drafting a wide receiver at pick 9, because right now I think Rome is the 6th best rookie wide receiver.
I think you might be lower than that.
And so I thought I just saw that stat last game,
Yeah.
but it's not benefiting you much at all. And like, you can find guys in later rounds that'll produce just fine for you. So when you're talking about the drop off in production versus the drop off in draft capital and value spent, like, dude, to be able to pick a guy a couple rounds later and still get, I don't know, maybe even 80% of what Rome Odunze is doing is just fine. Just fine. Like, more likely you'll get something similar, if not better, even, because those guys are just all over the place. Like you said,
if you want a direct example, this team is doing it right in front of your eyes, and it's the Chargers. They have an old 1st round wide receiver, Quentin Johnson, who is pretty much a bust. They took a 2nd round wide receiver in Ladd McConkey. They took scrap heap running backs in Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, and they invested everything in the offensive line. And yes, they've had a bit of a drop off towards the back end of the season, but with good coaching, a good quarterback, that's what this blueprint for this team is. We talk about blueprints for teams. We were hoping we were Buffalo. We were hoping we were the Eagles. We were hoping with this. Now your next blueprint to copy, it's not the Dolphins. It's not the best blueprint you can copy is the team that you should have been this year anyway, and it's the Chargers. You can be a good offensive line, mediocre talent at receivers. I don't want to see a goddamn investment at wide receiver other than a free agency pickup for a 3rd or 4th round guy or 6th or 7th round wide receiver. I don't want to sniff wide receiver. I do not care if Keenan Allen walks. I don't care if DJ Moore is upset in the offseason. I do not want to see any investment in talent position players this offseason, like whatsoever.
Dennis, I think that question is still yet to be, the answer to that still yet to be determined, because you do have to let the draft positions shake out. And then, I'd still have to do my research on some of these guys and whatnot to determine who would be available, where we're picking, and what would make the most sense. But just to entertain it, David,
and sorry, just one more thing that depends, not only draft order, who your next GM and coach are and what do they like to draft.
But just to entertain it, David, like, if you had to answer this question right now.
Areas of need, so here's the difference. If you're going left tackle, you are probably trading Braxton Jones, right? So if you're going that early, and in my early following of the draft shakeout and everything, the defensive line is a much stronger class this year than offensive line. So if you have like a top 5 pick and you can get that defensive tackle out of Michigan, I forgot his name. I think it's something Mason. Carl could easily correct us if he was here.
Carl's been jerking you off, hasn't he, about Michigan?
But no, he's like a top 5 generational prospect. You got Michigan, you got defensive ends, hybrid defensive ends. So if you get a guy like Vrabel and he wants to go into a 3-4, and there's like a hybrid defensive end that he loves that can stand up, Graham, thank you, Dennis. It all depends. I think in terms of what your areas of need are, it's clearly offensive line, way more than it is defensive line. I also think that everybody healthy, and depending on the defense you're running, your defensive line is pretty much there other than in the second defensive end, right? So you're looking at you need a left tackle, you need a left guard, you need a center, you need a right guard. The only thing that's even semi-solidified is right tackle, and that's Darnell Wright, and he's been kind of up and down. So you need offensive line. And also, in terms of just pure investment, people, what we've been just talking about for 30 minutes, we've been talking about protecting Caleb Williams. Nothing matters this offseason. Your most expensive offseason signing should be an offensive lineman. Your first investment at the draft should be an offensive lineman. And everything else can kind of fall by the wayside where it needs to fall. Because if he's going to keep getting hurt, then your wide receivers don't matter. Who the hell cares about where you draft wide receiver if you can't get him the ball because he's on the floor or if he's on the ground? So that's my point. It's just everything about offensive line this offseason.
Right. Like the way the situation was kind of constructed is kind of, I think the idea was similar to what the Seahawks did with Russell Wilson, where it's like, hey, you got this good defense. You're going to get this rookie in here and try and just ride it out through his rookie contract, but you're still going to be a defensive heavy team. However, you did draft 2 offensive players in the top 10, right? Quarterback and wide receiver this year. Dude, the way it's looking now is you're going to need to make that shift to be able to lean on that. And there's a timeline to this because at some point you got to pay Caleb. You have to make it work by then, period. Mm-hmm. Right? So, like, you already wasted that whole idea of the Seahawks, blueprint this year. It didn't happen. The defense will be nothing more than complimentary moving forward. You're not going to sit here and be like this defensive heavy team where you rely on defense and stuff like that. I think your picks should definitely go towards offensive line for sure. And like you said, all the focus should go towards offensive line. Dude, it's such a shit show. There is no consistency among these guys. Dude, are you handcuffed into signing Tevin Jenkins?
Not if you can get Trace Smith from Kansas City.
Okay. Can you enlighten me about that situation a little bit more? I'm not.
Kansas City's just in like a financial kind of hell at this point in terms of how much is heavy on their contract. Like if Travis Kelce retires, I think they get that off the books because he's got one more year. Patrick Mahomes costs a lot. They just pay a lot of players in different positions, and they do generally invest in offensive line. But I do believe that they just traded for. Who was it? Jacksonville released their left tackle. They signed him for a really, really expensive tackle. So Kansas City has their weakest part of their line is their left and right tackles. But they have a lot of money invested in both of those sides. So that's more than likely that he's one of the best guards in the league and he's going to have to walk. So,
okay. So you don't have to trade for him.
No. He's a fully unrestricted free agent. He's going to be just signing an absolute. You thought the guard contracts were ugly this offseason. I don't even care. If it's $20 million a year to get like one of the top 3 guards in the league, just do it. I mean, what else are you going to do?
You want to entertain Ant Mass's question here?
Interior 3, both guards and center. I don't know nearly enough about it right now, Ant Mass, and I'd have to do research and watch some bowl season. From what I've seen from like Todd McShay and Mel Kiper that I've started listening to, because this is about the time I started listening to a little bit more of that draft stuff, watch tape. I can't tell you for sure. The guys that I do know that are like top 5 bona fide is like the pass rusher from Penn State, defensive end or defensive tackle from Michigan and stuff like that. But I can't give you the offensive line info right now. The one thing I know statistically is you should never draft a center in the first round. So that's like a second or third round move. Other than that, I don't have the info for you as of right now.
Right. Yeah. For the most part, you're right. Listen, like you said, statistically, there's always outliers. You could always point to a center somewhere that was drafted in the first round that worked.
And there was that article that came out that was basically just, I forget who it was specifically. I want to say it was an Athletic article, Kevin Fishbane. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, where those details started coming out specifically about, we talked about this like 5 weeks ago. Matt Eberflus is supposed to be fired from the Colts, and then he got paid by the Bears and scooped up. But that was like an official release. That was like an unknown, quiet story that everybody knew, but nobody reported. And it was reported on an article on like the Athletic. You do not post an article like that without the permission, basically, or at least like with a go ahead of somebody in the upper. Dan Weeder, thank you, Flex Diggs. Dan Weeder posted a great article, just kind of going in there. And you don't post that unless it's basically like a writing on the wall type situation, because that kind of article, if Ryan Poles is here next year, you just go back and reference that. There's so many things that you can reference about Ryan Poles' future just being a little bit more obvious now, I think. And I think that future is that he's gone. I think there's going to be a mutual parting of ways or or he's just going to be straight up fired. So I don't know if, and Daniel Jeffrey's asking, does he know his fate? I don't even know if it's a knowing his fate type thing because A, I think the writing is on the wall a little bit more clearly. B, it possibly could be a mutual fate. He doesn't want to be here at this point. And C, I think Ryan Poles needs a hard reality check because in retrospect, this draft was one of the most arrogant, Super Bowl ready drafts I've seen in a long time because they have a total of 4 picks. They got their quarterback that you couldn't ignore. But Odunze is a luxury pick, man. You do that when you're like a Super Bowl ready team that needs like a pop of excitement on the offensive side. You're short a receiver, you're short a number 1 or a number 2. You go do that. Kieran in the 3rd round, dude, this is what we're talking about with left tackles and right tackles. These guys are either a sleeper ready to be stolen, but they're not projects, man. Yes, maybe he was injured, but he was a project out of college and everybody knew it. And so he's taking a left tackle to replace Braxton Jones for the long term. But again, it's a little bit arrogant. You should have drafted like a left guard or a center at that point and drafted a legitimate bona fide starter where you can get some depth in the 3rd round. And then Torrey Taylor, in retrospect, while I love the crocodile punter, he's awesome. It's fun. It's great. The balls to draft a punter in the 4th round. I think this was such a hardcore reality check for Ryan Poles that I think even for a guy at his position, like you might lose all the confidence in the world. He already thought he was the smartest guy in the room, making all these moves and trades and trade backs and stuff. But I think this was just such a hardcore, just gut check for him that I don't even know if he has the confidence to draft properly. And he's going to be, like we said, yes, it's obvious. Yes, you need offensive line, but regardless of what position in the draft you are, you're just going to be like, you know what? The media thinks I suck. I'm stupid. I'm just going to take the obvious pick. Here you go. Best left tackle on the board. There you go. Best left tackle, best left guard on the board. Here you go. And it might be a bad pick because the good teams kind of mix and match and trade back, trade up, this and that. But he just might be handcuffed at this point, not being able to make brave decisions or good decisions, which maybe he hasn't been exactly good at in the past.
You can't take risks. You have to now make more safer choices where even if these guys don't pan out to be Hall of Famers or whatever, at least the floor becomes higher. You need to make the floor higher. Like, it's just what it is. I like this question. Like, where do you even start and put it together? But I do think there's a lot of talent on this team still. I do think so. But I think at the same time, they're working uphill every step of the way. Like every obstacle's in front of them when the coaches aren't doing them any favors. I mean, we've had some situations come in where, Keenan Allen was talking about the play call's not coming in fast enough. We saw it with Shane Waldron when Caleb was trotting to the sidelines, showing him out. We saw it with Thomas Brown too, though. Like, and part of it was because Eberflus is dumbass, right? So, like, when you're dealing with all that stuff, the talent doesn't have the opportunity to just do what the talent's supposed to do, right? Like, if you can at least get, and that's why I'm all in on Vrabel, if you could at least get that part to just be stable and increase the floor, then you might create a situation where this talent on this team, whatever talent there is, has the opportunity to go out there and actually shine. You know what I mean? And actually overcome some stuff.
Dennis Moody always is good for just a brilliant comment every once in a while. Tavondre Sweat and Cedric Van Pran being on the board. I did a whole video on this when it's one of our first live videos. If you ever want to go through, I did a whole beginning of the season dump. Like, are we sure Ryan Poles is that good? I think I listed 11 offensive linemen that were drafted between Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens, and that all are starters in the NFL. They may not be top tier starters, but 11 starters in the NFL on the offensive line drafted between Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens. So I'm with you there. There's a lot of opportunity there. But you took the words right out of my mouth, Paul. I was thinking that too. Ryan Poles is definitely not good. He's not good at his job. But this isn't the disaster. This disaster being pointed at Ryan Poles all of a sudden, I think is much more of a hit piece than it is a reality. He's not good. Don't get me wrong. But again, for a lot of the reasons we just said, he's going to be handcuffed this offseason into making moves that even if he is a confident GM that has some tricks up his sleeve, he can't do them. He has to do the simplest, most rudimentary, easy stuff. At least a new GM, if he was doing something wacky and crazy, be like, well, let's see how it shakes out. Because this is a new coach and a new GM, and they have different things, and they have different values at different positions, and they have different things in the scheme that they need a player for. and that. But that's why I think Ryan Poles, I think it's just best for everybody to move on. However, I do agree with you, and you pulled it right out of my mouth. This team was this close to being 4-2, beating Washington and looking like world beaters in a playoff team, or at least like a playoff sniff. Part of the problem is it's good that they sucked so bad so instantly, because it's going to result in some sort of change and potentially even making the McCaskies do moves that they've never done in the past, firing head coaches, opening up the checkbook, releasing a lot of their professional and organizational control. And that's ideally how you build a real long-term success, because that Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus having success this year would have just been cologne on the stink, right? It would have just been deodorant on the stink. But it's just the writing's on the wall. And right now, if Ryan Poles is here and he hires another head coach next year, I'm out. I'm already out, because I can't have three separate people at the top of the franchise being on three separate timelines. Caleb Williams being on one timeline, the new coach and the new GM being on a totally different timeline. I can't do it. I'm out.
So, yeah, one of the things why it actually kind of makes sense, in my opinion, that Kevin Warren does kind of have to lead this coaching search. I know they said it at first. I was like, you're kind of, taking the rug out from beneath Ryan Poles' feet here. But if there's a coaching candidate out there that wants to bring his own GM with him, and Ryan Poles only has 1 year left, I think you said this, Dave. You're not going to interview a guy that wants to fire you. Like, you can't make that choice. So, but as Kevin Warren, you could go, you know what, Ryan, we're going to sacrifice you because this is the coach we want, and he wants his own GM. Sorry, you haven't earned that, right? The best GM? No. Is he terrible? No. I always say that rebuild phase is the easiest part. That first one where you come in and the team sucks and you try and just at least get it to average is probably the easiest part, because we've seen guys succeed at it over and over and fail in the long term. Ryan Pace, GM of the year. Yeah, year one's not always that difficult, but it's when you get down the line, 100%. So it's the long term that really matters here. And it's the same thing with Caleb, dude. I always say it takes 3 years to really judge a quarterback. That's why I don't care about this year anymore. I don't want to ruin this year to mess up the next 2 years. But I could see a scenario where Ryan Poles is still here next year for sure. But I would value more of who you're going out there and targeting as a coach and what they're going to demand. If Mike Vrabel's willing to work with Ryan Poles, and you can still go off and get Mike Vrabel and keep Ryan Poles here, sure, I do it. But if he demands his own player personnel guy, I would sacrifice Ryan Poles.
I think it's a necessity at this point. I think too many cooks in this kitchen already exist in Chicago, and I can't keep bringing more cooks and then asking them to find different groceries, and they all believe in a different recipe and all that stuff. A lot of cooking analogies here, and then I also just wanted to always chime in when the chat's this active. I do want to kind of just pop in there. Kind of Daniel Jeffries definitely reiterating what we're saying. And it's a big point that you'll hear me and Paul constantly say is that smugness, right? That arrogance, the smugness. We said a lot of these words a lot going through the season. So it's like you're pulling those right out of our mouth. And also, we can't stand when guys in the NFL think they're the smartest guy in the room. Bill Belichick was the best coach for 30 years. You know how he was that good? He kept football simple. He kept football, he had the respect for the game. He knew what works, what doesn't, what to use when, and he never tried to overcomplicate things. He just knew what to do, when to do it, because it made sense for football. He never tried to reinvent the wheel. And that's how you stay successful in the NFL. You adjust, but you never reinvent.
Nobody on that team, nobody on those Patriots team had a long leash.
Nope.
Malcolm Butler was set during the Super Bowl.
Yep.
None of them. And that's
Richard
why the
Seymour was traded for 2 first-round picks after Super Bowls, all that stuff. So, okay. So I had this going into this Vrabel conversation and kind of where we're going with this into the next year and polls. And we said this last week. This was my philosophy on that, because Vrabel is at this point kind of known to be not difficult to work with, but he needs things the way he wants them. And he needs people that work with him and not kind of work against him. So that's why this catastrophe of a Bears season, I think, is a potential positive if the McCaskies just step the fuck back. And also Kevin Warren, knowing that he's not necessarily a football guy, but he can maybe identify a football guy, is also going to just hire somebody to run the show and step back as well. I think here's a few signs towards the next season. And Paulie, I think you just said it a second ago. You're a Vrabel guy for next year first and foremost? That's your first choice?
Listen, I would ideally want an offensive-minded head coach based off who's out there that's got the experience, because I need experience. I think the experience in this situation matters more to me, regardless of your philosophy. So based off who's out there, Vrabel's my guy. Is he my ideal candidate? No, my ideal candidate doesn't currently exist unless you trade for him.
Okay, I agree. Let's remove these trades because they're adorable fantasies that we've been throwing out for a while, and the NFL has been kind of, thrown out, or, Twitter has been as well. But I'm with you as well that Vrabel's my first choice, and here's for a few reasons. Experience matters. The football mentality matters. The culture change matters. I want to sign Vrabel to a 10-year contract for all I care at this point, if that's what needs to be done. Hire him a player personnel guy, whatever you need to do. I was doing some research because I was thinking about this as I was listening about Ben Johnson being a must. Because right now I think Bears Twitter is split right down the line. It's Ben Johnson or it's Mike Vrabel. And there's really not much in between that I've noticed. I'll take a Joe Brady if that's all that's left. I'll take a Liam Cohen if that's all that's left. Whatever. It's just kind of the way the Bears operate. They'll take the fourth coolest, hottest candidate available. So I did some research and I wanted to find out. I might be wrong on a few of these, so bear with me. This myth, because you were saying I want an offensive guy, and ideally I would too. But I was thinking about it, and I feel like this myth of having an offensive play caller paired with a young quarterback has gotten way too big. Okay? And I did some of this in the way of, I'm going to name you first head coaches that are also play callers. Okay?
Okay.
Because everybody keeps insisting that Ben Johnson will fix everything, and Ben Johnson and Ben Johnson and Ben Johnson. Here are your offensive coaches that are also play callers. Kyle Shanahan. I was thinking of his dad. Kyle Shanahan. Zach Taylor of the Bengals. Sean Payton, Broncos. Kevin Stefanski, Browns. Andy Reid, Chiefs. Shane Steichen, Colts. Mike McCarthy, Cowboys. Mike McDaniel, Dolphins. Brian Daboll, Giants. Matt LaFleur, Packers. Dave Canales, Panthers. Brian Callahan, Titans. Kevin O'Connell, Vikings. What stands out to you there?
Very hit or miss.
Okay. So
real quick.
Yeah.
Kevin O'Connell got hired 20 days after Eberflus. We didn't even interview him. Just throwing that out there, by the way.
Kwesi Odensu Mofa. Fuck, I might be just dyslexic the shit out of that name.
What are you talking?
Kwesi is the GM of the Vikings. He was a finalist with the Bears as well. We chose Ryan Poles over him.
Okay, that's great.
Kwesi Odensu Modens Ofa, whatever.
It's all good.
Kwesi. So, okay. So now we're going to go back, and I want to go through that list one more time. There are also 6 defensive head coaches that are also play callers. Todd Bowles, going into the season, excuse me. Todd Bowles, Buccaneers. Matt Eberflus with the Bears. Funny. Dennis Allen with the Saints, also gone. Mike McDonald with the Seahawks, and DeMeco Ryans of the Texans. So there are 3 defensive callers left that are also head coaches. Okay.
You on your offensive list, you mentioned Brian Daboll.
Correct.
I'm not sure what the current situation of the Giants is. He is calling plays there right now?
Yes.
Because I remember when he first got hired, one of the things we discussed between each other was he got hired because he was, a good
play
offensive
caller,
play
and
caller.
Then he said he wouldn't do it.
And then he said, hey, I got bigger fish to fry as a head coach. And I kind of respect that because as a head coach, you do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but
I believe he went back there.
Okay, yeah, because it wasn't working out, so he had to take over, right? Okay.
So let's go back to this list, right? So we can go, I want to go one by one, and then think about who the quarterback is, and give me a win or a loss, or a thumbs up or a thumbs down on the coach. And then do they do what they're supposed to do, which is groom a young quarterback? Kyle Shanahan, win on the coach quality, win on the Brock Purdy coaching and grooming, right? So there's 100. Your number one. You're 1-1.
That is who you're hoping Ben Johnson will
Correct.
be. That is the hope. And me, I'm done with hoping.
Yeah. Zach Taylor, Joe Burrow. Both thumbs up? I'd give Zach Taylor a medium, but okay, we'll give it a win and a win. So there's 1, there's 2. Sean Payton with the Broncos, great quarterback, great play caller, good pairing with the young guy.
Yep.
Kevin Stefanski, good coach, grooms quarterbacks well.
Interesting. Man, they did him so dirty in Cleveland.
Didn't they?
They really did, because you look at what Baker's doing now.
They just forced him into a box.
They did.
So, but it is.
You know why they got rid of Baker? They said they needed a man in the room. So it was like they pretty much called him a child, attitude-wise, this and that.
I mean,
it's disgusting.
Deshaun Watson is what you landed on. That's a wild thing.
Crazy.
So I named the first 5 because in my mind, 5 or 6 are easy guarantees, and then the rest kind of whatever. Andy Reid and the Chiefs, easy win-win. Shane Steichen and the Colts.
Yikes.
I'm going to give that a loss.
Loss.
Quarterback stinks.
Drafted Anthony Richardson way too high.
Mike McCarthy, play caller and quarterback, loss.
Loss, middle for Dak.
Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins.
Listen, I like Mike McDaniel. I do.
Meh.
Now has he? Man, I don't know. I don't know what the issue there is. I think part of it is that you're in a division with the Bills. The other part of it is you're in the AFC. Like you're just, there's a lot of really good teams.
I can settle for giving Mike McDaniel a win. I can't do it for Tua. I think Tua.
I'm gonna do a middle for both.
All right, we're gonna meet in the middle there. Brian Dable, probably bad coach, bad play, bad groomer of quarterbacks. Matt LaFleur, win-win. I mean, he's fucking just the asshole. Best. Yeah, what a dickhead. Fuck that guy. Dave Canales and Bryce Young, middle. Let's not be nice. It's a loss. They suck.
Loss. Yeah,
they suck. Brian Callahan of the Titans, huge loss. Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings. I mean, he might be the biggest win out of this whole list, in my opinion. Okay,
definitely, because based off his tenure, like I said, got hired the same year Matt Eberflus did. Dude, they were on paper, they were more of a project than we were. Yep. Even heading into this season, they were. Like, you want to talk about Ryan Poles wants to talk about resiliency. That's a resilient ass team. They had 4 draft picks. One of them passed away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The other one went out for the season.
So I make all this huge point, and chat, please bear with me. I promise you this point gets good at the end. So right now, 8 out of 32 head coaches that we just went over are also play caller and head coach and are good at it. 8 out of 32. That means that none other. So you're 8, 16, 20, you're hoping for a 25% shot in the dark. Other part of this, these were not maybes. Shanahan was a lock. Peyton is a lock. Stefanski off of a Kyle Shanahan tree. Taylor, Shanahan tree. Andy Reid, inventor of basically like that tree. Mike McDaniel, Shanahan tree. Matt LaFleur, Shanahan tree. Worked with Vrabel. Kevin O'Connell, Shanahan tree. McVay tree. Worked with Vrabel. Okay? So these are not like maybes. These are not shot in the dark. This is not a Ben Johnson. None of these were Ben Johnson. None of them. Where he had no connections, was a guy kind of like going through the team. This was straight up the second in command to either McVay or Shanahan getting an opportunity. Bang, right? Now, one more time, I want to go through that 8 list of the 8 successful. And on your fingers, because it's going to be not many, count the playoff teams here. Shanahan this year?
This year?
Yeah, this year, playoff teams. Taylor with the Bengals. Broncos and Sean Payton. Stefanski and the Brown. You got one. The Broncos are in.
Okay.
Stefanski and the Browns. Chiefs and Andy Reid. Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins. Matt LaFleur and the Packers. Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings.
4.
So now these coordinator offensive play caller guys are not necessarily like just a lock to be. So now we're going back to the 4 out of 32 for being playoff teams. And I can bear with you that Shanahan is missing a playoff opportunity this year. I don't know when the Dolphins are going back to the playoffs. I think it's going to be a very long time. Bengals, I don't know. Maybe next year. Stefanski and the Browns, I don't know. Maybe next year. But looking at the remaining teams that are in this playoff hunt, right? You have Kansas City, we already went over. Buffalo, defensive head coach who does not call plays, Sean McDermott. Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin, defensive head coach, does not call plays. DeMeco Ryans, mediocre defensive play calling head coach, making the playoffs. Baltimore, special teams coordinator, leader of men, blah, 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 calling neither side of the ball. Denver, Sean Payton, we went over. LA Chargers are the last AFC playoff team. Jim Harbaugh, offensive-minded head coach, does not call plays. NFC side, Detroit, Dan Campbell, does not call plays. Philadelphia, does not call plays. Tampa Bay, defensive head coach that does not call plays, or does call plays. LA Rams, Sean McVay, does not call plays. Seattle, Minnesota, Green Bay, we went over. Washington, Dan Campbell, defensive head coach that does not call plays.
Oh, you mean the Lions, Detroit?
I'm sorry, Washington and not Dan Campbell.
Dan Quinn.
Dan Quinn. Defensive head coach does not call plays. 14 of the best teams. And like 11 of them have either defensive-minded head coaches who do not call plays at all or call plays, but are defensive head coaches. If I hear one more thing about how you need an offensive-minded head coach that also call plays and has to pair with Caleb Williams, I'm going to blow my brains out.
No, what you
it's
need
Vrabel.
Because what you need is stability, structure. You can't just preach accountability. You practice it, right? And so, like, when the guy you hired to call plays isn't doing a good enough job, bye. You know what I mean? Like, you get rid of them and you move on. Like, dude, that's the thing, is you need a philosophy in here. That's why I said I'm done hoping and I'm done gambling. I don't want Matt Nagy 2.0. Yeah, you just need a real coach, stability. That's why I said I value experience in this league right now more than anything else. And Vrabel, I think, checks the most boxes for me when it comes to just getting this team to a respectable point. Now, the other thing is, the other coaches in this division are all damn good coaches, right? Like, for you to think that some guy's going to come in here and be a better coach than Kevin O'Connell and Matt LaFleur, Dan Campbell, is a crapshoot in itself, right? No, dude.
To just have the balls and the bravery to go against these good teams and not blink and not be scared. There's one head coaching candidate that I am positive will not be nervous, will not be scared, will not blink, and will punch every team in the mouth in the NFC North for the next 5 years. And that's Mike goddamn Vrabel.
100%, David. And I'm so glad you're on this, because that's been my pick all along here, because it makes the most sense.